Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and I've got to say I am delighted to be joined today by Acsom Rabbani and the return of Jerry Taylor. Jerry, you've been a busy lad in the last few weeks, but you're back, so there's plenty to catch up with. Plenty.
Delighted to be back, boys. I've missed you.
And we're on for 12:30 as well, so brilliant. What a start.
That is a good start. We're not late. We are absolutely not late. But I'm going to start off by talking about Flag Day, right? And what does it mean? And probably growing up as a Celtic fan through the dark old days of Rangers winning 9 in a row, Flag Day wasn't something that we've seen very often, growing up. And it's something I would never take for granted. But what I seen yesterday is I seen images of people like yourself, I seen Jerry, going to the games, getting back in amongst a community. People, be that even just the friends and family you go with, the people that sit in front or behind you, all that kind of stuff, the people you meet in the boozers going to the games. And it could be worldwide, the people that you're in the pub and everywhere from Gurek to Zurich, as I say, watching Celtic, and it's Flag Day and Jim Craig's there unfurling the flag, and the Green Brigade have organised a phenomenal TIFO. And you look around the world in our timelines at the moment, the toxicity of it. And I looked at yesterday, Acsom, and I thought, this is a source of good. This really is. This football club can bring people together for a common goal, and that's what I saw yesterday.
Oh, it was honestly, it was fantastic. Jerry, you were there too, so you'll be able to kind of testify. But just from start to finish, walking up to the stadium again, everyone in good spirits, and as you say, anytime you turn on the news or social media in the last week, or even just generally, it's pretty depressing stuff that's going on. Yesterday's, you're there with like-minded people. You're there for the purpose and the cause of Celtic, and it just brings a smile to your face. It's almost an escapism from all the rubbish that we're seeing everywhere else. And the amount of people that came up to me, fans of the show, they're like, "Oh, can't wait to see the show tomorrow." It was just a joy to be there again. And I've been going for 26 years now. When I first got my season ticket with my dad and my brother, and the joy I have going to the game's still the same as it was back then. And it's because of, like you say, that Celtic community. And look, not everyone agrees on everything. Not everyone has the same views. But when we're there supporting Celtic, we're all there for that one cause. And the beauty of Celtic is that a lot of the in general, they have that same moral compass, they have that same welcoming community, and it really hit home yesterday, and it was just tremendous from start to finish, whether it was the unfurling of the flag, Jim Craig, seeing him there, Lisbon line, great with his wife, the TIFO was tremendous, and then a performance to match. It really was a top day from start to finish, and quite emotional at times as well.
Yeah, it does. It gets the emotions kind of running wild. Jerry, I'm just sitting here listening to Acsom there and wondering why on earth Adidas didn't just employ him to model that top.
I know. You're a beauty, big man. Yeah.
Do you know what? We were talking about it before the stream, that when I first seen the cup, I wasn't as keen. I thought it was too yellow, too Norwich yellow. But having tried it on now, and I've got it sponsorless, so I always like my top sponsorless. So it'll be perfect for a nice sunny day as well.
Brilliant. But by the way, we might get back onto that Norwich yellow at some point over the next 55 minutes or so. Now, we're talking about community, and obviously, you were talking about being to Celtic Park for 20 odd years. Acsom, if, like me, you started going to watch Celtic in the 80s, you've now been watching Celtic in 5 different decades. If I didn't feel old already, then dearie me, don't I feel like an old codger now? But what we have over the last 7 years, but particularly during the pandemic and in the aftermath, is we've built a community here on Acsom, and every single person that comments, everybody that likes, everybody that goes out for a wee walk and listens to it are part of a community. And I'll tell you something, right, before we get kicking off today, right here is a little gift on one of my shelves. You might see it. It says the Fields of Athenry, and it's pointing to where I think the fields will be in proximity to where this wee studio is. And I'm just going to read it a letter, guys. I'm just going to read it out, right? Verbatim. This is from Cheryl in Athenry. Dear PJD and all at the Acsom team, I have been meaning to send this for several months now. So here is a little something from the lovely Fields of Athenry, which you can put with all your other memorabilia. one which I hope you like. The reason for this is I listened to the daily podcast while out walking, and I started listening to Acsom when recovering from a malignant brain tumour. It got me up and out walking most days and kept me in the loop of what was happening with Celtic. Limited here, believe it or not, as well as getting other people's take on all things Celtic. Thankfully, I have made a full recovery, but still enjoy going out walking and still listen to you guys. Keep up the excellent work. See when that drops through my door, right? And you read, talk about emotional. That is unbelievable. Cheryl, delighted that you've made a full recovery. I hope you're listening in on your daily walk. And that just shows you, Asim, the community that we're talking about here.
Yeah, and honestly, that's great news. And there's so many like that. We've all probably received messages, whether it's on X or like letters like that. It's we probably underestimate it at times. And we've all. I first started listening to Acsom during those pandemic years. Low times for a lot of people. I've had loads of messages. You are the same about people that are kind of gone through similar struggles that we may have had in the past as well, and just talking about how listening to Celtic podcasts, listening to Acsom, talking to people with like-minded passions, it can make such a difference. So brilliant to hear that. Our very own Chris Double Denim, he mentioned it when he was going through some health troubles, how much Acsom was a lift for him. So yeah, even yesterday I had a guy, I hope I get his name right, I think it was Stuart from Chelmsford, and he wanted me to give him a shout out. He was sitting near where I was as well, and he says he tunes in every single day. So yeah, it's great. Like you said, it's just a right good community feel.
Yeah, it really is. And Jerry, I've seen you nodding along because I do not take that for granted. Every message, every email, an actual letter, old school, love that. Coming through the door with a wee gift. Phenomenal.
That wasn't Simon Weir, was it?
He sent me loads of paper clippings asking for signed photographs of Asim Rabani. I said I'll see if I can sort them out. That is a reference to Friday night's episode of This Is Acsom with Simon Weir. If you've not watched it already, prepare yourself, is all I can say, Asim. Prepare yourself, because it's a wee bit different, and it was tremendous. Great energy in the room. Now, what I'm talking about here is I'm talking about happy Bank Holiday Monday from Ireland, Jungle Line. Thank you very much for that, and I hope you're feeling better. Joe Hamilton, right, I'm going to start off with this because Joe's talking about positivity. Hail, troops. What a start to the season. Let's all stay positive and enjoy what we have in Brendan We Must Trust. Now, we've talked about the community, be that an Acsom community, the community, 60,000 people in that stadium at every home game, those around the world in the boozers and elsewhere. And what we've got at the moment, Joe, to be positive about, this is basically, taking it right down to the basics. We've got the manager. We've got the right manager in place. We've got a core squad that I think is got the potential to be something special if it was just added to by 2 or 3 players. And we've got the money to do that. So for me, Jerry, we have got the perfect opportunity. And this is what I'm talking about. I'm not being negative when I say this. Right, great start. We're off to a flyer. But we have a perfect opportunity to really get out of sight of anybody within the domestic scene and then start making this progress that we keep talking about in Europe.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. I was saying it a lot of the game yesterday, a lot of the fans echoing what you've just said there. If we're this good with pretty much the same team that we finished with last season, just how good can we be with, I'd say, 4 quality signings? Like Europe, we're until February now. Is that right? I'm saying February at least.
I'm not sure when the final games are, but certainly post
after the new year.
Yep.
It's now's the time to strike. You've got a world-class manager in place. You can see what he's been doing in pre-season. I was scared that maybe we'd peaked pre-season because the results we've been getting were phenomenal, that some of the play was great. But to see it carry on into that game yesterday, the link-up play, just the fast-moving passing, the courage. Do you know, that's what I noticed was different yesterday, the courage to take that ball. I mean, without scoring a goal, I think Kyogo had a great game and almost scored. That would have been goal of the season. Straight off the bat. The hard work's there, the courage is there, but yeah, we need to strike. And I said that yesterday online. We can't just rest now. This is just because of what's happening maybe over the other side of the city. We're Celtic. It's fine. All right, it's great to win the titles. It's great to win trebles. But we should be up here rubbing noses, shoulder to shoulder with these giants on the shoulders of giants, and it's just, this is who Celtic is, and a lot of people are getting puffed out with it, and it's different. I mean, we're always saying that people just buy into it every year. All right, we've beat them, and we go again, but you're starting to hear the murmurs getting louder. We don't want to be an embarrassment in Europe. I'm not saying we were last season. I think it was fine margins last season, but that proves even more. Those fine margins, just the more quality. We can step by step. I'm not saying we're going to go in, smash up the Champions League straight off the new setup, but build over the next few seasons. Keep Brendan, keep him happy first and foremost. Because I'll tell you something: if we do get to the end of this transfer window and we don't have the players in what we think he wanted, I don't think a lot of fans would grudge him leaving again this time round, because once bitten, twice shy and all that. But anyway, to stay positive about it, great play. We need to build on it. So yeah. Let's not get lazy in the transfer window.
There was that bounce, the pre-season bounce, and going on about progressing in Europe. I speak to the old heads. I speak to people involved, people who went in the 60s and 70s, and I always find it interesting that the late David Potter, a fine Celtic writer and historian, used to speak about what Celtic were prior to Jock Stein, returning in 1965, and not just in terms that they weren't the dominant force in Scottish football, of course, but they were nowhere in Europe. I mean, I know that European contests were fairly young in their existence, but we weren't known across the land the same way that we are now. And the European trailblazing years from, let's say, 1964 right through to 76, I always say it was a 12-year period. It wasn't just one season. We actually put Celtic on the map. But every so often, generationally, you need to do something positive. You need to do something successful. Otherwise, right, and I know it was Chelsea fans I seen, but the wider football public will think that we are just tin pot. You remember the two guys before the game when we pumped them 4-1, and they were going about Celtic as if we were, I don't know, some kind of pub team. But that will be the view of many casual observers until we do something tangible in Europe.
Yeah, look, as much as obviously domestic success, that's our bread and butter, but anyone else won't pay attention to that because they don't value the league. They don't value the opposition that we're up against. But, yesterday for me was very, very encouraging because, we all reveled in the kind of pre-season performances, which I thought were great. But we did caveat that, our favourite word there, Jerry, with the fact that it was pre-season and we were playing against teams that were a lot more open. And I guess the concern was, how would we fare when we were back to playing against a low block and teams just camped in their own half? But what I seen yesterday was very encouraging. The speed of play, the movement off the ball, everyone just playing with a right good confidence. And when you're just constantly trying one-touch passes, intricate moves like that, that you're feeling good about yourself. And you've seen the link-ups between Kyogo, O'Reilly, Hatate. Whenever they got the ball, they're looking for round-the-corner passes. So I just felt the intensity was really good. And you're right, what both of you have said. Brendan's got a strong hand to play with, because if he's got us playing this good with ultimately the same squad as last season, rather than the board looking at it and being like, right, okay, we don't really need much work, use that and say, right, we're already seeing the fruits of what this manager can do when he's got a bit of time with the players and got them playing the way he wants. You add 3 or 4 really good players in there that will then elevate the players that are already in there, because I thought Kyogo was back to his best yesterday. Kuhn's looking good. But if you give these guys even more competition and bring in more quality, I just think the whole squad and the whole standard will just lift. And Rodgers was big on that the first time, because he brought in Scott Sinclair and he said straight away the standard just lifted because Scott Sinclair demanded those standards and he was that good. And that's all it needs again, 2 or 3 guys that will come in. But there was so much to be encouraged about yesterday, given, it's exactly the same team as last year. But these guys look like they now know what the manager wanted. And they just played with a tempo that, let's be honest, other than maybe the last couple of months and then the odd game throughout the season, we didn't see. And that's what's really encouraging about that. But it's time to go and push on that. And here's hoping that the manager keeps on making that message and that gets heard loud and clear.
Yeah, without a doubt. Listen, some great comments coming in, and we're going to be delving into some of them. We want to talk about the performance of Kyogo. Maybe separately talk about some of the decisions that went against them. We need to talk about the debut boy, Kasper Schmeichel. I hope we can go through a whole season without anybody calling him Peter. but now that I've embedded that in your minds, it might happen. We need to talk about the performances of the likes of Hatate and Matt O'Reilly. We'll talk about the stalwarts, the guys that are going to become members of the 500 Club, Callum McGregor, James A. Forrest. And by the end of this season, not only will they have joined an elite group of ex-Celtic players, only 12 of them at the moment actually in that group, they might become the most decorated players, one of them anyway, in Celtic's history. Tremendous. It's a great time to be alive. But as I keep saying, we want more. Now, Jerry, before we move on, an opportunity to go out of sight every now and again, and I don't know if it's subliminally, I will use the title of a movie from the 80s or 90s in the tagline. And I don't do it on purpose, but when I typed it, I was like, out of sight. Can you remember it? George Clooney?
Do you know, I've never seen it. I've never seen it. I wasn't a George Clooney fan unless it was From Dusk Till Dawn.
I met him once. He was outside my work. I did. I've got a picture.
What?
He was outside my work, Jerry. I kid you not. He was outside my work opening something. He's got something to do with Social Bite. You know, the shop in Edinburgh? And basically it feeds the homeless, right? And Social Bite. He's
I actually remember that now.
Aye, and he turns up and somebody just shouted in, right, everybody, Josh Clooney's outside. And I was probably the first.
I bet everyone was like, who's that standing next to Paul John there?
I just said, help him. Shook his hand, got a photo, moved on. Out of sight.
I know it's a tangent, but who's the most famous person you've ever met?
Oh,
mine's is Susan Boyle. She came to see a pantomime I was in. She came backstage and then she grabbed me and gave me a cuddle and then she dragged me off stage pretending she was taking me home. So there's
pretending. There's legs in that. There's legs in that story. I'm just thinking of great Celts. I'm just, because when I was younger, Jerry, my superheroes all wore the hoops. So, anybody that's played for Celtic. But Brendan Rodgers, let's be honest, October last year at the Rock, that was special, right?
I suppose.
Yeah. I says to somebody, the word got out there was going to be a very special guest, and everybody was coming. I think you said to me in the morning, "Tell me who it is." I said, "I can't, Jerry."
No, literally, I was hanging through your car window, wasn't I?
You said, "Is it the Pope?" I goes, "Not much more important." And I was right. Brendan Rodgers came on. Sorry, I jest. Yeah. I don't want to upset anybody. So we're going to be talking about all that and more. James Kerwin, welcome to the show. Check out his site. Jennifer Lopez was in it as well. Can someone please enlighten me as to how Kyogo's goal is offside? How can the arm of any player deem you as being offside? We know you can't score with your arm. Right, we'll talk about Kyogo and his performance first, Hastin. Here's a player who is, at the moment, the only recognised striker at the football club. And he, for me, approached the pre-season games. It was Queen's Park or Chelsea in the same way. He's looking like dynamite. He's looking so sharp. He's been found with a lot more of his runs. Not all of them, but a lot more of them than he was last season. And I'm looking at him just thinking to myself, he could have like a vintage campaign. But in the back of my mind, because I try to look at all the information that's available to me, he's just signed a new deal with a new agency, and that worries me a wee bit. So we need to get the new striker in. The Norwich yellow of Ida, of course, get him in the door. But we need to also keep Kyogo. I can see just from the moments yesterday and from the pre-season that he could have a vintage season this campaign if we keep him.
Yeah, I thought he was brilliant. He really deserved a goal yesterday. His movement and his link-up play. Like, I know there was a lot of talk last season when he was dropping short and people didn't like that. But he's actually a very clever player, and I think he's really good at it when there's a lot of movement around him, which there was yesterday. I thought his link-up with, like I said earlier, Hatate and O'Reilly was brilliant. So I think he's looking as sharp as we've seen him for a long time. Yeah, you're right. I was worried that he's having to play the 90 minutes at the moment. I thought we could have maybe taken him off anyway. But hopefully Ida will come in this week. I've not got any kind of in the know knowledge on that one, but you'd like to think we'll get it sorted pretty quick, because I don't want to go to Easter Road next week still with just Kyogo as our only striker, especially if Maeda's still 50-50 based on Rodgers' comments yesterday. So I want Ida in as soon as possible. It looks like he's doing whatever he can on his side, where the rights and wrongs of that people will debate, but the guy clearly wants to come. Well, that's the other thing. People have mentioned that. Well, Rodgers has obviously worked with him for the 6 months that he was here, and will know his character and his personality. I've seen people saying that we don't want players like that. It's just everyone will have their own opinion. For me, he wants to come. Norwich are obviously making it difficult for him. We didn't like it when the likes of Moussa Dembele did it at Celtic. Obviously, we're going to look at it differently when it's their own players doing it. But yeah, I like the player, and I think obviously when he was at Celtic, he didn't show any kind of attitude issues or anything like that. Even though he played, pretty much second striker for most of it to Kyogo, but anytime he came on, he had a perfect attitude. So the sooner we get that done, the better. And then we move on to the other positions as well. But yeah, in terms of Kyogo, really looking sharp. Jerry, you were there as well, and you see it when you're at the stadium, don't you? Like some of his movement. As you said, Paul John, we're still not finding him all the time, but he's making the runs. And what I liked yesterday was we really varied our play. There was so many times where we went long, we went short, we were trying all sorts of different ways, and that's why I've seen Kilmarnock get a bit of criticism, and I know Charlie Mulgrew was. I seen I watched back the game afterwards, and he was quite critical of their approach. Whilst I agree, but I think we really made it difficult for Kilmarnock. I think the way that we won the ball back so quickly after losing it really didn't give them an out. So I think all of it's kind of geared towards that fast style of football again, which is what Kyogo thrives off. And as you said, that goal, if it had gone in, early contender for goal of the season, it was such a brilliant move.
It was sensational, wasn't it? I mean, see, yesterday we had a short discussion, Jerry, about the goals that never were. And the one, obviously, that Jota scores against Motherwell and he's ruled offside. Somebody filmed it on their pager. We never actually got the lines drawn in. And if we did, they were done by Crayola or an Etch-a-Sketch. And that was one of the goals because of the movement leading up to the finish by Jota. That was sensational. And it's a shame because you don't get it in the end of season highlights because we didn't get the goal. And it was a wee bit like that. The speedy movement, the speedy thought. I mean, he sent that Kilmarnock defender in the opposite direction. Then the wee dink. It would have been sensational, but it's a sign that Kyogo, he seems like he's so fine-tuned to this. And again, we'll probably talk a wee bit about this with Hatate as well, whereby, Kyogo, he didn't have a vintage season last campaign, Jerry, right? But he still played in every single game. The only player that made an appearance, not a start, in every game under Brendan Rodgers. So it's not like he was out of favour, but there were certain periods where he cut a frustrated figure last season, didn't he?
Yeah, I think Brendan Rodgers' comments are quite telling when on the Hatate situation. It probably goes for a lot of the players there. They were used to a certain way of playing and, I don't know, a certain way of training maybe, and Brendan's come in. It's taken a lot more time than we thought for them all to adapt. Just towards the end of last season, they clicked at the right time and they've carried it on. He looks, like you said, he looks so sharp and off yesterday thinking he's going to have a hell of a season. Do you know one of the best ways was summed up about him yesterday? His offside goal. So I've turned to the guy behind me. I went, was he offside? He went, he looked it, but it's Kyogo. His movement's that good. I don't know. Might not be. And it's true. And when you're that high up and you can look down, he's phenomenal. Like you don't see it in the TV as well. I'm not becoming one of those fans. Like I was at the game, so I got a better perspective. But for me, even I was shocked. I mean, I've been at a lot of the games last season, but when you're higher up and you just watch, I just kept watching him. Imagine having to play against him. My worry is a lot of people are writing him off, maybe not going to the Premier League or something because of his age. But nobody can tell me that he wouldn't rip that up still with the time, the space he would get. I'm worried that Ange might come in for him. I hate to be the one to say it, but if people think that he wouldn't be able to do a job for Tottenham, I'd disagree. But I hope we can keep him. I really do, because he's key. And like you say, we've no other striker now. There was a few moments you thought, when the crosses coming in a bit too high for everyone else, that Ida would have soaked them up, especially the first 5-10 minutes. I noticed that as well. But having the two of them, we can't go into this Champions League with one striker or no strikers if he gets injured. So fingers crossed.
I know he's changed agency recently, and I know that's kind of raised some eyebrows, and it's something we've spoke about before, Paul John. It's the Cabase agency, which is it same one as Ange?
Yeah.
And
Matt Riley.
And Matt, yeah. I think I just can't see us then having to go in the market for 3 strikers, essentially. I just think that's going to be too much carnage, too much chaos. And I don't think Kyogo's itching for a move. I think it's, also he'll probably be encouraged by how we've started this season. As you said, he cut a frustrated figure at times last year, but a lot of that was because we weren't utilising him effectively. And if we're going to get more games like yesterday, then that would be so enjoyable for a striker to play in. I know he didn't score, but He had 2 or 3 really good efforts. Disallowed goal, we were finding him on regular occurrences. So I think he'll be excited for what we can do this year. And I'm not worried that he's going to go. Not this year anyway.
No, again, it goes to the second part of getting out of sight. It's like every so often you have the opportunity. We've got the gaffer in place. We've got the core of I think, a team that could be very, very special, right? But a massive part of that is keeping the likes of Kyogo, O'Reilly, and Hatate. There's going to be interest. Going back to the point you made about Ida, I totally get I totally get it, because you think if they would do that once, they would do it again. And we have had players doing it in the past. I know people talk about downing tools and all that. I'm talking more about, a player like, let's say, Paulo Di Canio refusing to come back for pre-season training. Cadet doing the same. We spoke to George Cadet about it, Jerry, you and I, last year. Van Hooijdonk, agitating for a move. We've seen it so often. If, for example, a player does it, it's because it's been a success. So I sometimes look upon it like that, right? It's like, okay, if you do become that guy in 3 years who's agitating for a move because somebody wants to buy you for 30 million, it's because you've been a massive success for Celtic. So I'll enjoy the journey anyway. But as you say, the gaffer's worked with him. He knows, and I think he puts a massive emphasis on attitude, application, how you are around the dressing room, how, personality, the whole package. And I don't think we would be interested in bringing him in permanently if there were any concerns. Talking about bringing someone in permanently, let's talk about the debut, Casper. Let's keep going, Casper, right? You were talking about seeing things at the game. A big part, I think, of the laboured kind of style of play that we've had in the past, and it allows organised teams like Kelly and various other teams in the league to regroup very quickly, is just not playing the quick ball through the lines. And we had a habit under Ange and a habit under Brendan last season to play a lot of balls in and amongst their own defenders, looking for something that's on, right, no space, pass it back to Carter Vickers. And then it went on that horseshoe around the back four, back to the goalie. And the one thing I was saying when Schmeichel came in is I think he's a better passer of the ball. I think he's more comfortable with the ball at his feet. And we've seen it. He didn't have much of the ball yesterday, Jerry, but there was one moment where he plays a cutting pass first time to Matt O'Reilly. He plays it on to Palmer, and it goes from defence to attack in an instant. I think that's going to be massive for us in cutting through these very organised defensive teams this season.
Absolutely. Now, I'm a sucker for a goalkeeper, and I put up online, I promised I wouldn't fall in love with another keeper so soon. He's played one game. Now, this is nothing against Joe Hart. Joe Hart gave us some ride, but there's just this calmness and this confidence in him that anytime the ball was going anywhere near him, like you said, he's sometimes cutting out the defence and playing those passes into the midfield. And he didn't have a lot to do, but what he did exactly as he had to do. And sometimes we miss that, don't we? Sometimes we miss, what an experienced goalkeeper to have. I don't think it's sunk in for a lot of people just how good a signing Kasper Schmeichel is. People just look at his age. But when it comes to a goalkeeper, you can't compare that to your midfielders, your strikers. Goalkeepers last longer. Sometimes they hit their peak when they're older. You need to look at the likes of Craig Gordon for that. So I think, and having a great backup keeper now as well, we're solid there. We really are. I wonder if that had the impact on the defence as well, just his calmness and assurance, because I thought the defence were great. I'll speak about Liam Scales later on, but I was raving about him yesterday. A lot of people at the stadium were, and that's not like me. So, yeah, but Casper, I'm looking forward to this. I'm wanting an extension of his contract already, because I'm already dreading the fact that he's leaving at the end of the season.
You look at the career he's had. Obviously, I was watching the press conference last week. We were represented by Josh Murphy. It was quite a telling press conference on a couple of different notes. But you look at Schmeichel's career, as you say, 37 years of age, still the captain of the Denmark national team, 105 caps. We're his 12th club. That includes loan deals. He gets a clean sheet on his debut for us. It was his 724th senior appearance of football. How did you make what did you make of his debut, Acsom? Because as Jerry says, I'm not taking for granted the calibre of goalkeeper we've signed here.
Yeah, he didn't have much to do, obviously, in terms of shot stopping or anything, but I've seen enough of that in pre-season to know that, wow, this guy can really, really save you, because there was some brilliant in both the Chelsea and Man City game, like one-on-one where he's not favourite to save it. It's not ones that you'd expect the keeper to save. He really, really pulled off top-class saves in those. You're right, I think because he's played in Belgium and France the last couple of seasons, you almost forget how good he is and how good he was when he was playing for Leicester, and the fact that Rodgers knows him so well, and again, just listening to him, I don't know, it doesn't mean much, but it does as well. When you listen to players like Joe Hart and now Kasper Schmeichel, and you get that confidence just listening to them and how they come across and the kind of leadership aspects that they bring to the team. You're right. It's one of those that when he was announced, I was kind of, I knew that he's a good goalkeeper, but I wasn't sure again about the long-term planning of it. But then when you add that to Sinisalo coming in, and when you actually see close up how good Kasper Schmeichel still is, the fact that, like as you say, he's still captain of Denmark, and he keeps himself really fit. You can see that. I think you're right, Jerry. I think we've done really, really well with that. And the goalkeeping situation, which was such a worry when Joe Hart was announced he's leaving, you're like, what are we going to do to replace him? It's a testament that that we've got no concerns now. And you're just hoping that, as you say, we can just get the best out of him for as long as he's here. Early days, but I think unanimous the Celtic fans are in terms of the goalkeeping situation has been taken care of and dealt with in a very professional and adequate manner.
I think he'll be a massive character. I've seen him giving a wee Celtic fan after the game his gloves and all that. I love all that kind of stuff, right? He's made.
Then I'm up to get the gloves for myself.
He's put them in eBay. No, but the thing with Schmeichel, when I was looking at him, yeah, there's a calmness about him. There really is. I mean, players in front of him are going to feel safe. And he obviously got the memo for his first press conference because he was telling a wee story about sneaking into a game against Rangers just for the experience when he was on loan at Falkirk, and he called it an Old Firm derby. But when he was talking about looking ahead to next season's derby, this season's derby, called it the Glasgow derby. So he got the memo. He definitely got the memo.
Did you find out which end he was in?
I didn't. No, that's
a good shout.
That's a good shout, yeah. And what was he wearing? He has to go in disguise, I'm guessing. He's not one of these guys like Jerry who can grow a beard in 3 days. Jerry, how did he?
I know. I need to shave again.
Because you had to shave it for your show.
I shaved it for my show, and it wasn't. Do you know, it wasn't to come on the podcast today. I went, I need to shave that again because I need to shave it for Blame It in the Bucky plug.
Oh, do you? And then grow a big, massive, bushy one when you're in Jim's latest play.
For Jim's show, wait, you see the tash and the haircut because obviously it's set back in the day. So, well, bits I don't want to give in away. Anyway, I digress.
Looking forward to it. Yes. Yep. I'm still playing my part from the early 2000s, according to the slaggings I get on social media. Stephen Sloan, Rangers haven't paid tax in 10 years because they operate at a loss every year. We paid the tax man £8 million last year. Let that sink in. We're so rich, we only have one striker at the club. It's frustrating, and I think that the words of Brendan Rodgers after the game is basically, he's appealing to the fans, Jerry, as often as he possibly can. He's directly saying, I know what the frustrations of the supporters. We share the frustrations. We want it done as much as them. And I'm going to say it. I'm not going to go back to the frustrations of not getting it over the line, Jerry, because I just think that's unthinkable. I just, we do have a team, although it's not headed by a head of recruitment, who are working on this. And this is their 24/7 job. And they'll have a list of players or positions that need to be filled by choice 1 or 2, maybe even 3. And there's also a huge amount of people who need to leave the building. So I'm going to start off with the centre-half situation, right? Because just to qualify my feelings on Liam Scales, Liam Scales was my 3rd best player of the year last year. He was behind Joe Hart and Matt O'Reilly. I rate him highly. I love that, underdog story, the Tony Ralston of the year that Liam Scales was awarded with last year. I love all that, right?
And your boy got a goal yesterday.
And he got a brilliant goal, Jerry. And, he won the corner. Oh, aye. We'll get to the bricky. We'll get to him. So Scalesy gets a great goal. He wins the corner from which he gets that goal. And I thought his performance was excellent. He seemed less laboured on the ball. He was confident in playing some great passes through the back lines and all this kind of stuff. But at this moment in time, all I would say about Liam Scales is he is being chosen ahead of Mike Novroski, who was the biggest signing of the summer last year, Gustav Lagerbielke, who was in the Sweden Team of the Year, £3 million. He's ahead of him, well ahead of him. He wasn't even on the bench, I don't think. I'd need to double check that. He's ahead of Stephen Welsh. He's ahead of Kobayashi. he is definitely a first pick right now, Jerry. But I still think we can bring in somebody who can make us better. That's not a slight on Liam Scales. I thought he was brilliant yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Just because we're saying, like, it's true, there are better centre-backs out there than Liam Scales, and that's not saying that he's a bad centre-back. It's just for Celtic, and we've got to be going for the top quality. Now, what I did notice yesterday, and a few times in the European games, the Champions League games last season, everything goes back to Liam Scales when the move breaks down. Right? Everyone trusts Liam Scales. The amount of times it just pass back to him to start the move again, almost like a playmaker at times. And I'm thinking if his teammates trust him enough, then I think some of the fans have got to trust him a bit more. I did say at one point during the game, because the guys around me, I was saying, look, he's having a great game. I says, he's not been caught under the ball once. Then he got caught under the ball towards the end of the second half, just that once. But compared to from what he was great last season. I think he's even taken another step up this season. The confidence of last season, he won't have that imposter syndrome that was maybe lingering on him at times last season as well. And the more game time you get, the more he's going to have belief in himself. But you're right, we need a top quality centre-back to compete. If anything, it will make the other two play better because they've got the competition there. But we need that for going into Europe because I think Scales is great. But can he do what he was doing yesterday in Europe consistently? I'm not too sure. So, yeah, it'd be good to see someone coming in and getting some of the centre-backs out the door as well. So I don't know if Celtic are waiting to get rid before we bring in. But I don't want to weaken first before we bring in. I'd rather see them bringing people in and taking that risk of then getting some other players out the door. But I don't know how it all works in that way. But big pass marks from Liam Scales, massive, and it was echoed all around the stadium, anyone that I was speaking to as well. So it was nice to see. Nice to see.
Yeah,
his goal was great.
It was a brilliant header. It's all about forward thinking as well, though. Like I agree. I think Liam Scales had a brilliant game yesterday. So did Greg Taylor, two of the guys that have maybe came under the most criticism. But it's not even criticism. I think everyone appreciates what Liam Scales did last season, and again how he was solid yesterday. What Greg Taylor brings to the table, but it's just about thinking forward and thinking, we are going to be playing in this Champions League. We are going to be playing tougher opponents. It's just about having added quality that can raise the game of these guys and then come in and make us better. And that can go for any position. It's not just about those two, but they're maybe the most obvious ones that we've, like, you look at our midfield yesterday, that midfield three for me is Champions League. Again, we can improve on that, but you look at Hatate, O'Reilly, and be confident in all three of them, being able to raise their game. So it's more about just trying to have that kind of quality all around the team in every single position. And as good as yesterday was, we're going to have tougher challenges coming up, and that starts next week. We all know how much we struggle at Easter Road sometimes. It's one of those grounds that we rarely play well in recent seasons. I think we had one or two under Ange, but both performances at Easter Road last year weren't great. So we're going to have tougher games. And as good as yesterday was, we can't shy away from that things can change quickly. And in order to be able to address that is having that added quality come in so that you've got options. If someone has a bad game, you've got someone else that can come in and just strengthen the squad. And look, the manager is saying all the right things. So that's why I'm a lot calmer than I was maybe a week ago, not just because of the resulting performance yesterday, but I think the managers came out and said it a couple of times. He knows what he wants. He knows what's needed. And let's just hope that's what comes in.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that you're right. It's not a criticism specifically to the individual. What it is let's say we get Man City in the Champions League, right? And you're going into that game and you're up against a player that everybody's aware of, and Erling Haaland. You look at his record, right? And you say, right, Premier League games 66, goals 63. Champions League games 39, goals 41. Bundesliga, 67 games, 62 goals. This is a guy who is at the absolute peak of his powers, and maybe your best player can't contain him, right? But would you be confident with X going up against Haaland? And that is the question you've got to ask. And that X could be Carter Vickers, it could be Liam Scales. And if you're not confident, then you need to replace the player. Now, Carter Vickers has never had a player challenge him for a position at Celtic Park. So we're not good enough in terms of getting that competition for places. And I agree with you, Jerry, that it's not good enough to have 4 or 5 understudies who are never going to get a sniff at a game because they're on a decent wage. And yeah, we are cash rich and we shouldn't really worry about that. But we could be going into the next season with 8 centre halves if we don't, move on some of the guys I've mentioned. Liam Scales, will he be the man that we call upon for the Champions League games? Who knows? I'm pretty sure we're in the market for a centre half, though. I was also looking at last season because I always remember the Ross County game due to the fact that one of my favourite Celtic players, Rio Hatate, didn't feature in the starting lineup. So I had a wee look at both the games, right? So if we go back almost a year to the day, the 5th of April 2023, against Ross County, we beat them 4-2. The starting lineup was Joe Hart, Tony Ralston, Greg Taylor, CCV, Nawrocki. The midfield, McGregor, O'Reilly and Turnbull. And up top, it was Abada, Kyogo and Maeda. So when you compare and contrast that team to the one that played yesterday, obviously Schmeichel has replaced Hart. Mm-hmm. Johnston was in for Ralston. Scales was in for Nawrocki. Hatate in for Turnbull. Kuhn in for Abada and Forrest in for Maeda. But only one player of the 6 who replaced the starting lineup last season has been purchased since that date, and that's Nicholas Kuhn. So it's very much the same group of players that Rodgers is dealing with, but it looked far more like a Brendan Rodgers team yesterday, Jerry. This is the point. So we're still dealing with largely the same group, but he has, I don't know, maybe had a wee bit of time to stamp his style and his message onto the players, because I seen a completely different team yesterday.
Yeah, I think it is. It's a time thing, the time that he's had with him, the full pre-season. I keep going back to this. Remember, he used the word awkward. It was quite awkward at times when he went back at the start. So who knows what was going on behind the scenes during pre-season, what other things he was having to deal with. So to get that more time, I mean, I dare to say this because you don't want to give any encouragement for the board not to buy, but you sometimes get it when accidentally you don't get any other players in. You're forced to use the same players for 2 seasons in a row. And does that allow them to gel even more? And you start to get the better results because they're playing more and more together and they're not getting all new players coming in, new players going out. Who knows? But I just think the real reason is he's been able to stamp he put his own stamp on things now and he's had the time to do it. But I keep going back to it. If we had quality players, just how good we could be.
Jerry, we're 40 minutes in and you've not mentioned James Forrest, who I thought, by the way...
waiting for it. I was waiting for it, by the way. Honestly,
It was like back to 2017, peak James Forrest. Honestly, he's just carried on from where he left off last season, and to the point where he's made that position. I've got no issues now with James Forrest starting games. Which like you said a year ago, you named the lineup. Then he was nowhere near it. He was nowhere near our starting games for us for quite a long way throughout last season. Yet now he's playing some of the best football he has in years. I thought. On a side which is probably not more natural to him, I thought he was equally as effective. Every time he got it, you felt like he's got the beating of the fullback, and he was tracking back as well. So really encouraged with what I'm seeing with James Forrest as well. So you're right. Look, sometimes it takes time for team and players to gel with each other and a manager and to get his ideas across. And I think that's what we've seen towards the end of last season, through to pre-season, and now at the start of this season. Is that they all know what's expected of them. They're all playing in a identifiable style, which I remember that Ross County game, Paul John, and I remember it took us quite a few weeks where everyone was still saying, what's the style? We were struggling to kind of find what was the difference between that and, there was no real kind of something that we could notice and say, that's a Brendan team. Now, I know there's been a lot of talk about Brendan's comments in the press conference about the Chelsea lads saying, "No, that's a Brendan team." But literally yesterday, you could say that's a Brendan team. That's more of what we expected anyway. It's more of what we wanted to see when he came back, and it's more akin to Brendan's first season when he first joined us back in 2017. So if we get more of that, I think we'll be coming on a lot of Mondays, Jerry, with smiles on our face, at least with the style of football we're playing.
There will be far more happy Mondays. That's why the mug is being used. Absolutely.
See, another thing, Paul John,
I don't mind Brendan doing that. I don't mind Brendan referring to himself in the third person. The David Brent thing, I love it. I want more of that. I want more of it.
Lie to me, baby. Laura Bradburn. So, another thing as well, courage, trust. The players seem to have more trust in what he's trying to do as well. Do you not think? When you seen the game yesterday, and when he's talking about trusting that he can take those risks in certain areas of the pitch and don't be worried to lose the ball. And you could even see, like last season, we were moaning, we could hear the groans when we gave the ball away, but not so much if we gave the ball away, because we saw what they were trying to do, so we can see what the game plan is. So yeah, totally agree with what you were saying on that one. And Jamesy Forrest, just let me say it. What a boy. What a boy. I was so excited. I was up on my feet watching, and it was just like peak James Forrest, and the confidence in him. Give him a 5-year contract right now.
The thing with Jamesy, and I do want to focus on James Forrest, because he is a player that we need to celebrate. We absolutely need to celebrate, because he's again a player who has come in for criticism throughout his Celtic career. I've seen a lot of it last season, and he comes out with the cold, and he plays a massive part in us winning the double. I'm going to take in some of these comments before we get onto the subject of Jamesy, and I'm going to also bring in McGregor to that, because the amount of games they've played, the amount of trophies the guys have won is absolutely astonishing, incredible. And Hatate, you used the word trust, Jerry. I get the sense that this time a year ago, if we look at that Ross County game, Rodgers didn't really trust them, and he didn't really trust what Rodgers was trying to do. But there was far more of a understanding yesterday, whereby Hatate's playing, and he looks like he's just about hit peak form this season, which would be tremendous. And Rodgers obviously believes in him because he picked him. That was a big sign last season. He picks Turnbull, who by the end of the campaign's away. He didn't trust Hatate, but he does now. And I love these words after the event, because he never at any point yet last season said anything negatively about Hatate. He's waited until the player has overcome whatever the differences were. And now he's saying, oh, by the way, this was the issue last season, and this is the Hatate we've got now. I think that's great man management. And I don't care if he refers to himself in the third person. We want more of it. Sledgehammer, Messiah, here we go. Good day from Sydney. Brilliant. Thank you for tuning in. Was heading to work after the match with the new Celtic strip on. Did you look as good as Acsom, though? Probably not. Car drove by, slowed down, opened the window, and he yelled up the Celtic. That's what we love to hear, absolutely. And Liam Devine, this is a decent point. Let's just rule out Haaland. He's a complete freak. Yeah, I get it. Who's got to be playing up against Haaland and doing okay? You're right. You're absolutely right. I'm going to talk about a wee bit of the Jamesy Forrest. Right, let's have a look at this. So, if my calculations are correct, Callum McGregor has now played 465 games for Celtic. Jamesy Forrest has played 494. Right now, as I've banged on about for long enough, there are only 12 players in the list of Celts who have played 500 or more competitive games of football for Celtic. And I feel sorry for guys like Jimmy McGrory, because he's not on the list. Because back then, competitive games would have been Scottish Cup and League. So all the other competitions that were in Scottish football back then, there was no League Cup. It was a Charities Cup. It was a Glasgow Cup. They don't count in a competitive book. So I need to caveat that. And then you look at their age. So Callum McGregor's 31. Jamesy Forrest is 33. And trophies. This is the one that I love, right? At this moment in time, Callum McGregor has got 22 trophies as a Celtic player. Jamesy Forrest has 24. Now, look at the list of all-time most decorated Celts. And I've got to say, a European Cup probably gets more points than a League Cup, right? Yeah. Bobby Lennox, 25 trophies. James Forrest, 24. Billy McNeil, 23. And then Callum McGregor and Scott Brown, 22. So if anybody's got any doubts that we are watching history in the making with these two guys this season, there's the figures. Jamesy Forrest, if he wins a treble, or if we get a double and win something in Europe, he could be the most decorated footballer at Celtic. But in fact, he only needs a double. Callum McGregor.
A treble, and then it's James and Callum, first and second.
Unbelievable. I mean, we need to appreciate that, Acsom, don't we? These guys, and you might disagree with me in the comments, these guys are legends. They're legends of Celtic Football Club.
Yeah, it's a word that gets thrown about a lot, but you're right when you put them in that kind of company and you look at the longevity. Because these days you don't get that in football as well, and that's there's something to be said for that. And both of them, let's not make any bones about it, could have had moves throughout their time at Celtic. Obviously, Jamesy's kind of in the last couple of years struggled for game time and stuff, but there was points where he was on peak form and at his best, where there was interest from England. Same with Callum McGregor. Probably when Brendan went, there was interest in McGregor as well. So these guys have chose to stay, and as you say, have been part of our absolute dominance for the last decade. And it would just be fitting if we can, like you say, give them give them a wee run in Europe as well, because maybe that's what's holding people back from putting them in that legend bracket, because obviously some of the other names, as you said, it counts double, if not more. You know, you haven't won a European Cup and whatnot, but you know, some European success, whether that's just a prolonged run or some really big moments, you add that to their CV. You know, they've had a few, but something that really stands out, would probably put them right up there as well. But unbelievable, and like you said, let's hope that by the end of this season, we're talking about these two as the top two.
When we were speaking about it last week, Jerry, Joe Ledley said that they might want to build a wee statue of James. It would be cheap because you don't have to invest in any bronze for his neck, because he doesn't have a neck.
No neck.
Cheers, Joe. I'm going to say it. They're legends. They've not won a European trophy for Celtic, but they are legends of the football club. Look at what they've achieved.
Picture the scene, right? In a few years' time, Callum McGregor, Celtic manager, his assistant, James Forrest, they take us to the Champions League final.
Are you writing a play? I'm doing it now. Bruni needs to be part of that. Your mate Bruni, give him a shout.
Bruni will take us to the semi the season before.
And is there something to be said as well? They're two of the most kind of understated. You know, they're not about the social media, about the limelight, the attention, and both of them are like that. You know, they just get on with it. They love the club, so professional in everything they do, and they're the two that are, like you say, up there. So you know, there's something to be said about that as well.
Total role models, aren't they?
Yeah.
Skills played well, says Hoopy67, but we 100% need another centre back. Well, we do when you even look at the secondary choices there. I mean, I know that there's a bit of support for Stephen Welsh by a lot of our contributors and also those in the comment section. By the way, 1,200 watching us live today, so thanks everybody for tuning in. But we definitely need a new centre back because we don't have that secondary choice. If we've got an issue, you go into any game in the Champions League and you have an injury or a suspension to Scales and Carter Vickers, and we are struggling. It's the same at left back, it's the same at centre forward, and that is one of the main reasons why we need to go into the transfer market and buy these positions and fill them up. Stevie boy, best thing about the game yesterday, watch it back, Hatate cuddling Scales after his goal.
Yeah.
Well, again, you know, another player I want to talk about before we get on to some of the dubious decisions is Nicholas Kuhn. Now, I seen January, we would like to think January was Brendan Rodgers' window.
Yeah.
And we know that the previous summer wasn't, right? Because a lot of the deals were down the line and Brendan made his feelings known about that as the season progressed. I don't know how Bernardo came about. I would like to think he had a part to play in that, but we had done business with Benfica before. He certainly had identified Nat Phillips. It didn't work out. But the January transfer window, Ida, we know the phone call was made on the Monday, signed on the Wednesday. And Kuhn has obviously been identified. And last season, you were looking at him thinking, oh, is this another winger that doesn't make the grade at Celtic? But during a good pre-season and yesterday's performance, he's starting to turn the tide of opinion, I think.
Yeah, I'm just so glad he backed up what he did in that Man City game, or that first half of the Man City game, because he looked, you know, electric in that. It's two great finishes. The assist was sensational for Kyogo's goal. And then yesterday as well, felt lively throughout. So, yeah, again, it just shows you, you know, we spoke to a few ex-players on This Is Acsom. Bobby Pettit was one that I remember saying, you know, we can't write people off too soon because sometimes you just need a bit of acclimatization. You're coming to a new country. And again, look, we're early doors. He's still got a lot to prove. He's still got that to do that consistently. But if pre-season and yesterday's anything to go by, it looks like we've got a player in our hands. And as you said, January seemed like Ida and Kuhn were signings that Rodgers took initiative over and ownership of. And they do look like Rodgers type players now when you look at them. You know, Kuhn is very direct, tricky, gets down the line, can cut in. Paddy Roberts-esque, I know people have mentioned that before, not only in his looks, but in his style of play. And then Ida, you know, again, the kind of Dembele type of player that we had back in Rodgers' first time, a bit more physical presence and power. And it just seems like it's all coming together. So if you just sprinkle that, you know, all over the pitch, then it's going to be very encouraging. So yeah, Kuhn was another one that I thought was brilliant, deserved his goal. Albeit it was a very fortuitous one in terms of deflection, but you know, that's one thing I want to see him do more. Yeah, I want to see him take more shots because I think he cuts in a lot and gets into good positions. Maybe doesn't trust himself with the shot as much as he could, but that's what really encourages me. Rodgers, he's very good at making players better, and he'll identify that, and he'll be in his ear as well and talking to him, and I think we'll see him grow and grow as the season goes on. But yeah, that's another one to be excited about as the weeks go on.
What about the pass from Kyogo as well? Unbelievable. First time. Oh, what a pass that was. Great assist. And
can we talk about the Tifo before we finish up as well?
We've got to
Guys, it's my first time ever being part of a Tifo, ever. So I was actually above the Green Brigade, and I got to hold one of it was all down to me by the way I held my bit.
The way you held your bit.
See the pressure I felt? I actually turned to the guy and went, I just keep holding this. And he's laughing. He's like, so I couldn't see the Tifo because I was behind my bit of plastic.
That's the thing. You don't get to see it at the time, but it's when you come back and see it, and you're like, wow. And it's time and time again. So hats off to the Green Brigade, because the amount of effort that must go into making these work, and then we've seen how bad it can look on the other side of the side. So it's not easy.
That catchphrase meme that it shows a certain person's Tifo and they're just laughing.
Say what you see. See, the thing with that as well is I'm saying we as if I'm taking some kind of credit. The Green Brigade are one of the best exponents of the Tifo. I mean, you look at some of the teams from around the globe and some of the spectacular scenes that are created by fans and the work that goes in, the cost that goes into it. We are up there. Absolutely sensational bit of work. At some point, maybe before I kick the bucket, I'd like to see a massive big coffee table photographic book, all the amazing Tifos the guys have done. Absolutely sensational. Loved it. Brilliant. Now, just before we go, we've got 3.5 minutes. I thought the officiating was absolutely rotten yesterday, right? And when I mentioned it, after the positivity of everything else that I thought went well, you get the usual culprits coming in saying, you're paranoid, this and that. I'll tell you something, right? Can somebody explain to me why that wasn't a penalty? Because I'm not seeing an offside decision given. Asim, I'll start with yourself. I mean, again, great bit of play by Matt O'Reilly, straight off the training pitch, to use a cliche. And Kyogo is taken out. Why is it not a penalty?
It's one of the most stonewall penalty decisions you'll ever see. And that's the thing. It was baffling. Even at the time, you're just like, that's a clear penalty. And you're thinking, maybe I've missed something. Having watched the replays back, he's got the touch. He's ready to go around the keeper, and the keeper's just clattered right into him. It's just there's nothing. I can't think of any explanation as to how that can't be given a penalty. I don't know what the guys in the studio said after the match, because I'm not had a chance to kind of watch the Sky studio. But I don't know. Did Chris Boyd say it was a penalty?
Charlie Mulgrew said it was a penalty. I think Chris Boyd said, the keeper's nowhere else to go. Just the usual.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, he's clattered into him. But it was 100% a penalty, and like we won 4-0. The ref had no kind of bearing on the game, but that doesn't mean we can't call it out. It was another really, really poor refereeing performance. And then the day before, again, penalties that we were seeing given week in, week out. Well, not week in, week out. In certain matches last season, when it suited them, we're suddenly seeing not. So I'm all for the penalty handball situation to be a lot more lenient this year in terms of what is a handball. But let's see consistency then, because if that wasn't given a penalty at Tynecastle on Saturday, then let's not start seeing penalties like that given next week at Easter Road.
100%, because it's basically the go-to, it's the default. Oh yeah, but Willie Collum has relaxed that rule and it's been announced, etc., etc. Well, let's wait until we've got a body of evidence, then we'll say, okay, is there consistency there? It is frustrating, Jerry. I mean, listen, we won 4-0. It's not about being entitled. It's about just seeing the laws of the game being carried out. It doesn't matter if you're winning at a canter. Like I seen a handball right in front of the referee that he waved play on. And because Celtic are winning 4-0 and there's a couple of minutes to go, no, let's just deploy the rules of the game. One goal, I don't see it being the case this season. Who knows what might happen? One goal has determined the destination of the league title in my lifetime. So, you want every penalty that is a penalty to be given. You want every decision to be correct, don't you?
Absolutely. I think it was a case of, people have disputed it. It was a case of we were 3-0 up at the time, and it's like, well, let's not hurt the other team. But like you said, we have to, Brendan Rodgers used the term was that we had to punish Kilmarnock because of the fatigue towards the end, but and that's what Celtic were doing, try to get as many goals as possible for the reasons you said. It could be one goal, maybe not this season, don't want to get too confident, but like you say, it's got to be consistent. Now, I was the other side of the stadium and everyone knew it was a penalty, right? But do you know how I definitely knew it was a penalty? You just watched the Killie keeper's reaction. He was, I don't know if you showed it in the camera, but he was right up the ref. He was showing the Celtic players, no, I just did that. And you just kept seeing him do that. And I went, yeah, that's how I used to react when I gave away a penalty. Protest far too much. But not just that. He could have, I've not seen it back, but from what I'm hearing, it could have been a bad one on him.
It could have been, Jerry. It could have been, but you're right. I mean, maybe he should have been a wee bit more animated with his arms when we were being applauded onto the park, when with Jim Craig getting applauded on the park. Because see that, I'm not kidding, see the ex-Rangers players who fail to go into huddles and all that, they are constantly thinking about Celtic.
Yeah.
You know, whilst they're standing in the huddle, right, standing up, like Fleck looking over at McBurney, they are thinking about Celtic. And it's just like, how sad are they? It's pathetic. You know, there is a Lisbon Lion, mate, right? And he has achieved something that you will never achieve in your life. Clap your hands. Clap your hands. Show some respect, you know. Unbelievable, but maybe we should expect it. Listen, 1200 live on the Monday bulletin. It's been a nice, happy, positive one, Acsom, isn't it?
It has, and I think, you know, I think by the time we're on next Monday, I think we'll have at least one more player in as well. So I'll have this top on again.
If we don't, it's your fault then.
And then he'll swivel his chair. Yeah, Paddy will blame Jerry. He'll swivel his chair round and you'll have Ida 9 on the back of it all along. Yeah, there you go. There's the reveal right there. Thanks everybody for getting involved. Give us a thumbs up. Sorry, Jerry.
I'm surprised no one's used it. What was the name of the celebrity that owned Norwich? She might still own them. What was she called?
Delia
Smith.
Delia Smith. Why has nobody used that meme yet? Her shouting, "Where are you?" I was getting Ida. Has that not been used yet?
It will in about 5 minutes. Yeah.
Somebody make that one up, please.
Brilliant. The Acsom community is strong. Thank you to Cheryl for my Fields of Athenry sign, which is now taking a permanent place on my shelf there. Thank you very much for that. And I do appreciate every single one of you for tuning in today. It's tremendous to be part of the Acsom community. And finally, thank you to Acsom Rabbani and to Jerry Taylor for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers.